Hello, welcome to Public Service Consulting Practicum, PADM 680. I'm your professor, Dr. Eddie Witzel. Before we get started, let me explain some of my experience related to the class. I recently retired from the federal government after 30 years of service as a civilian engineer with the U.S. Navy. 25 of those years was at China Lake in the California desert. The last 6 years has been at Patuxent River Naval Air Station in southern Maryland. That's directly south of WAU. You go south of DC, south of Waldorf. There's a little peninsula between the Patuxent River and the Potomac River with the Chesapeake Bay to the south. That's where we live. During my career, I've held several different positions with various responsibilities. I've been an engineer and a team leader. I've been a first line supervisor with about 20 employees reporting directly to me. I've been a middle level manager leading an organization with about 60 government employees and 100 contractors. I've also been an upper level manager with 300 government employees and reporting directly to an SES, and I was working as his deputy. Being an upper-level manager was one of my career goals. While it may sound like a dream job, for me it was not fun. I was on the job for about 2.5 years before I requested being transferred to a group that did internal consulting. The experience from the internal consulting position is most directly related to this class. In that position, we'd help different work groups make improvements. I've also done consulting with a nonprofit organization outside of work and got paid to help them. My educational background is a bachelor's degree in engineering from Walla Walla University. I have an MBA from Regis University and a PhD in leadership from Andrews University. We have 3 sons and 1 daughter-in-law. My wife and I love kayaking. I love backpacking. Last week, my son and I went on a short backpack trip. This was the view from our campsite. In August, I'll be gone for 1 week on a longer backpack trip. It's very important that you have the textbook on the first day of class. We'll be reading the first 4 chapters the first week. Since this is a 6-credit class, you can expect that it'll be about twice as much work as your previous 3-credit classes. Half of your class time centers on the textbook and learning about consulting. The other half of the class is volunteering for a nonprofit organization. So you'll spend about 40 to 50 hours of consulting with a government agency or a nonprofit organization. This would be an average of 5 to 6 hours each week. So please begin thinking about where you want to do the consulting. If you already work for a government agency or nonprofit organization, that would probably be your first choice. This should be something in addition to your regular duties, such as a collateral assignment. If you cannot conduct the consulting work at work, then look at organizations you are already familiar with, such as church or school. You could also talk with friends who are involved in nonprofits for ideas. If none of these options work, there may be a few opportunities at WAU. Please don't be afraid of this class, but be prepared for hard work. Read the first 4 chapters this week in the textbook. Now I'm going to go ahead and review some of the chapters from the textbook. Chapter 1 talks about the human touch. The author says that the book's key value is that it gives simple, pragmatic change model for use in turbulent contexts. Have you seen turbulent context at work or at church or school or at home? I've seen them in all of these communities. Work is hard. That's why they call it work. There are 5 key human conditions and drivers that permeate all change programs in varying levels. These are self-interest, the drive to look after oneself, Short-termism, the drive for payback today rather than tomorrow. Sentiment, the tendency to be driven by emotions. Stuck, the tendency to seek a comfortable place and stay there. And sociability, the need for human stimulus and contact. We take each of the 5 human factors and understanding the level to which each is present in the client group and present in a positive or negative way. Then ask if the presence of the human factor will aid the change process or act against it. So Chapter 1 is all about the human touch and understanding the human factor and the 5 conditions. Chapter 2 starts with the question, why is it that a relatively simple idea of having a problem, getting someone to help us find a solution, and then implementing the solution gets chaotically wrong every day? So the crux of the 7 C's from the outset has been rooted in the notion that change which is not sustainable is of limited value and in many cases causes more problems than if we left the system alone in the first place. Have you ever seen a change initiative that was trying to make things better but ended up breaking everything both short-term and long-term? There are 3 principles I learned long ago. The first is improvement requires change. The second, change always costs. The third is change does not guarantee improvement. So let me repeat that. Improvement requires change. Change always costs. And change does not guarantee improvement. The author discusses the value through sustainable change. So there's 3 parts of that: change, value, sustainability. There are forces in an organization helping the change go up and forces pushing it down. So the forces are either pushing it up like this or pushing it down like that. So will the change take off, like an airplane taking off, or will the forces pushing it down cause it to crash and burn? So Chapter 2 is about sticky change or sustainable change. Chapter 3 introduces the 7 C's. So the first one is client. Define the client's orientation of the world, their perception of the situation, what goals they have regarding the final outcome, who has power to influence the outcome. Once this stage is concluded, you will have a clear agreement as to what value you will deliver to the client and what value they will offer in return. The essence of this stage is to understand the person and the problem. The second C is clarify. Determine the nature and detail of the problem to be addressed. Map the construction of the system under consideration. Identify what and who is to be included and excluded from the change, and determine what areas pose a risk for the assignment. The primary question to understand is, what is going on? The third C is create. Use creative techniques to develop a sustainable solution. Critically develop a solution that is measured against clear success criteria. Take a divergent view as possible to find potential options, then choose the option that meets the defined criteria. The fourth C is change. Understand the fundamental aspects that drive and underpin the change process, and in particular the human factors that need to be managed. The fifth C is confirm. Ensure that the change has taken place using quantitative and qualitative measures. The sixth C is continue. Ensure the change will be sustained using learning that emerges from the transition and skills of the new change agents and sharing the new knowledge and skills. And the seventh C is close. End the engagement, process with the client, emphasizing the need to understand the final outcomes and the added value, new learning, and what further action you might undertake. There are two sets of questions. There's Spiral 1 questions and Spiral 2 questions. You will meet with your client and ask these questions. The answers to these questions will form the basis of your consulting. I've put these questions into a Word document for you and posted it on Learning Tree. I would suggest that you print these and take them to your first client meeting. So, Chapter 3 summarizes the 7 C's. Chapter 4 expands on the first C, which is the client. So you must understand the person. There are issues with the client that you must understand. First, challenge the client. The real risk in any change project is to assume that the client knows best. One of the primary goals is to challenge the client perception of the issue and get to the real problem that needs to be addressed. The second is a three-legged stool. Who is the client? Who are the end customers of any change I might make? And what is my primary role within the relationship? So there's three legs on the stool: the client, the end customers, and the third leg is me, the consultant. The next issue is head-heart negotiation. To what extent does the client tend to make emotional decisions, or are they more logical in outlook? So there's a continuum between head and heart. Where is the client in that continuum? The next is the trust index. To what extent does the client trust me, and how can I make it more likely that they will do so before the first contact? The next is the push-pull relationship. Will I use a social style to build a relationship with the client, or focus on the product's pitch? So is it social, or pull, product? The 3D connection. The importance of gut feel cannot be underestimated in the client stage. The 3D connection model explains why emotional choices can be crucial as supposed logical approaches. Next, you must understand the problem. There are tools that will help you understand the problem. There's MPH client mapping. From the very beginning, seek to view the problem as the client sees it, not how you see it. Outcome testing. Through the use of questions, draw out the client's real wished-for outcome. The change ladder. Remove fog from the initial situation problem by focusing on the dominant area where intervention might need to take place. And then the last is compound contracting. Agree a synergistic contract will set out a framework for action, define the roles and responsibilities of each party, and offer a tool by which the success or failure of the change process can be measured. So this compound contracting, in written form, we're calling that the consulting proposal that you will be writing. So the textbook goes into all of these in more detail in Chapter 4. Skim through this before you meet with your client. Then after the client meeting, focus on areas that apply to your case. So that's a summary of the first 4 chapters.